All right. It's okay. We'll just scratch all of that.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway. Okay. We are going to begin because I'm finally sitting here with Leonard Brooks. My name is Susan Caolo. Today is January 30th, 2022. And I am in Austin, Texas. Mm-hmm. And after multiple phone conversations and introductions, I finally get to sit down here in person with you.
Yes.
So thank you very, very, very much to let me come into your home on a Sunday afternoon. So this is wonderful for me. I'd like you to, if you would, for the record, say give us your name, your branch of service, and rank, and what unit you are in, and we'll get started. I want to hear the story.
Okay. Well, my name is Leonard Brooks, and I was born and raised in Passaic, New Jersey, and I went and joined the Army in 1963 out in California. I left New Jersey in the middle of my high school years, went to San Francisco, stayed with my grandma. When I turned 17, 2 weeks later, I joined the United States Army, and that time I had to have both parents sign.
Oh, yeah.
Little arm twisting, and they both signed and agreed. And that was the start of my 25-year career. I ended up staying 25 years. And
what was going just to set, since it's starting stage, what was going on in '63? You just were joining? There was nothing that you wanted to get anywhere, or
no
reservations at that time about joining?
No. Like I said, I was living in New Jersey. I was still in high school. I was a junior in high school. I had got tired of school, thinking I knew more than the teachers, and then Mom and Pops, they didn't agree with the lifestyle, the pathway I was going down. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, I don't have to live here anymore. I'll go to California and live with my grandma. And so that's what I did. I left and went to California, lived with my grandma. I was 16. I did not enroll in school when I got there because I said if I wanted to stay in school, I would have stayed in New Jersey. So I was, in my mind then, that was like the spring of '63. So it was only going to be 2 or 3 months before I turned 17. And I had already made up my mind I wanted to go into the military when I turned 17. So,
had you been out there before to your grandmother's?
Never.
How did you get out there?
Long ride on the Greyhound.
Wow. Okay, you took a Greyhound bus?
Yes. Now, I didn't go to my grandmama's house with my mother and father's approval or blessing.
Okay, I'm getting the story now. All right.
So, I just decided one evening,
wow.
I knew more than my parents, and I says, I'm out of here, and without them knowing, I just went over to New York City and jumped on the Greyhound and took off. Going to Granny's house.
That might be a whole nother interview, just the trip cross country.
Yeah, and so once I was there, they tried to convince me to come back. My mom, come back home and all that. And I told them, well, I'm not coming back home, and I'm going to the Army. And my mother didn't want to sign. My father convinced her. I signed and went in, and at that point, when I went in San Francisco, I made up my mind then that whatever I do, I was going to be, my couple of years, 3 years in the Army was going to be a success story because I could not go back home and face, we told you so. So.
I think that does a lot of people.
So I had made up my mind that no matter what, it's going to work, so.
Oh my gosh.
And then, of course, I went in and actually, the transition was easy because coming up in New Jersey and stuff, it was in inner city Jersey. We were older, we were wiser than we were years old, coming up in the inner city and all that. So I didn't have a problem with that. But I do have an interesting story that in the AFI station, when we got ready to go in there, they took us down to the AFI station in Oakland, California. And there was a gentleman sitting there next to me. We were all scared. I was 17. There was a lot of draftees in there, a lot of young teenagers. And there was a gentleman sitting next to me, and the drill sergeant comes out and said, who's on the buddy system? Any of you guys on the buddy system, raise your hand. So somebody says, what's the buddy system? And the sergeant explained that buddy system is a group, 2 or 3 guys who know each other from high school. They join together, and they promised you would stay together through basic training, and then through your secondary training, which was AIT, you would be together. Then after that, you go your separate ways. So I'm sitting there, and there's a guy sitting next to me and says, hey, and we're whispering because we don't want the big sergeant to hear us up there talking. Hey, do you have a buddy? And I say, no. And he says, do you want to be my buddy? I says, man, be quiet, man. We're going to get in trouble. He says, I just want somebody to be my buddy. You want to be my buddy? I said, yeah, okay, I'll be your buddy. So I said, what's your name? And he says, my name is Keith. He said, what's your name? I said, my name is Leonard. We both raised our hands. We said, Sergeant, we're on the buddy system. And come to find out, his name was Keith Brown, Provo, Utah. And we went up. We were on the buddy system. We went to basic training. We were in the same basic training company. And we went to advanced training. We became medics in Texas. We were in the same Texas company. And then at that time, it was time to go after that training. So I got orders to go to Germany, and Keith got orders to go to Indochina at that time, which was Southeast Asia. And and that's the basic training picture there with Keith.
You can hold that up a little bit.
This is my basic training company. It's going to be hard to tell you which one is Keith.
Yeah,
Keith is in there, and I'm in there.
Okay.
And so this was 1963.
Okay.
Okay, and this would have been July, August 1963, somewhere in there. Okay, and so then we were together in basic, and then we got transferred to Fort Sam Houston, Texas. We were together in Fort Sam Houston, Texas. Then when it came time, after our training in Fort Sam Houston, it came time to go separate ways. Me and Keith, we had a $2 bill. One of us had a $2 bill. And we decided to split the $2 bill when we found out he was going one part of the world, I was going to the other part. And we just said, one day, buddy, we'll get together and we're going to put these together. So here's a picture of this $2 bill. But this is a picture that's a little bit later. So I kept my half. My half is the one that's really deteriorated. The one on the other side is Keith's half. Now, I must say, when we left Texas in December, the first part of December '63, we never communicated with each other again. Never heard him. But he kept his, I kept mine. We said one day our paths will cross. So years later, in 2009, I was on the computer one day, and I was looking through my books, and I seen my dilapidated half of the $2 bill that I done drug through the swamps and everything else over 25, 30 years, So I says, I wonder if Keith is in Provo, Utah. I remembered he was from Provo, Utah. So I Googled, I looked up Keith Brown, Provo, Utah, and the address comes back. Oh, what the heck, Provo can't be that big. So I write him a little note. I photocopied my half of the $2 bill. Say, if this is the Keith Brown that was in basic training in '63, get a hold of me. So I get it back. He takes his half of the $2 bill, and he sends this letter back to me saying, you know what, I've been carrying this around. Now, Keith only stayed in like 2 years, 3 years, and got out. I stayed 25. And he says, yeah, I've had this in my wallet all this time.
And what year was this again?
2009.
Wow.
And we split this $2 bill in 1963. And so then we communicated with each other. We exchanged Christmas cards. We still haven't got physically together to put those $2 bills together. But
it's coming. It sounds like it's coming.
That's
an amazing story that you even thought to do that at the time and then hung on to it.
Yeah. Yeah,
it might have been good luck.
And then, on the money, how they got the serial numbers on both halves. So I said, he probably said, I don't know, that's not the same $2 bill. But then you look at the magnifying glass, and the digits, the serial numbers are the same on both halves. So that's one of my feel-good stories there.
That's a wonderful.
And this is it here. Here's my half right there.
It's pretty worn.
Yeah.
Wow. What a great story.
And then after that, I left Fort Sam Houston, went to Germany. I was stationed in Baumholder, Germany, a tank unit, and I was a medic for a tank unit in Baumholder, Germany. And that I went there December of '63, right out of training. We shipped out of New York, and we went by boat. Mm-hmm. And at those days, the ships, they took 13 troop carriers. They took like 13 days to get from New York to Germany. Little small ships. They had like 2 ships service the Atlantic area, 2 ships service the Pacific area. The soldiers going to Philippines and all that. So I went on the, never forget it, USNS, United States Navy ship Geiger. That's the ship I went on. And it was 13 days, and it was like a top out there. And we left New York at night, and we went down in the hole and went to sleep. We got up in the morning, and all we could see is water as far as we can see around us. And for 13 days, that's all we seen was water. About halfway through, we're on top of the deck one day, and the captain says, "Everybody look over to your right, way out there." And there's 2 smokestacks on one of these luxury liners way out there. He says, "That's a Queen Elizabeth going to England."
Oh.
And we're on the way over. And then about 4 days later, he says, "Look to your right over there, the smokestack." He says, "That's the Queen Elizabeth going back to New York." And we're still going over.
Oh my gosh.
So 13 days, get there, take the train down to my unit in Baumholder. I was a medic down there for the tankers, and did well. Met a first sergeant down there. He put me on the right path. I was a little rough around the edges, and so big first sergeant. I can't remember his name. Mm-hmm. He was Native American, very impressive, big guy. Took me under his wing when I first got there and sat me down and told me, the do's and don'ts, and if I wanted to make my stay in the military, this is the road I should go down. And he took me under his wing, sent me to all kind of schools, learning stuff, any kind of schools. Volunteers, nobody volunteered. He put my name on it, and I went. And consequently, I made sergeant. I made E5 in like 2.5 years.
Oh, that's fast.
So he took me well. He took me under him, and I'll never forget him. And so then, roll around 1966. I stayed in the same unit from 63 to 66. Came time to get out, July 66, because I was in for 3 years. Mm-hmm. But I had made sergeant, so I said, "Well, I'm not getting out of this. This is good." But I loved Germany because I was single, 17, 18 years old, having a good time. Now, the unit, we stayed in the field about 7 months a year training. But when we weren't in the field, we could go on leave and furlough and stuff. And so I went to Paris. I don't know how many times I went to Paris. And, you name it, Amsterdam and Copenhagen and Stockholm. And went to all these different places, just loving it,
Yeah.
Loving it, having a great time. And Germany itself was good. And so come time to get out. And I said, this ain't bad. I'm going to re-enlist and stay over here. So I was going to re-enlist the first part of July of 66. And I had a friend that worked in personnel, and he told me, "Brooks, don't re-enlist now." I said, "No, man, I like it. I'm not going back to New Jersey, that city life." He said, No. What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to re-enlist to stay over here." He said, "Well, you ain't going to stay here, He says, "But you want to go home?" I said, "Yes." His name was Mahoney from Kansas. I'll never forget him. Now, he was a drafty guy, but he was smart because he was a clerk. Mm-hmm. He says, "There's a regulation that says if you get out of the Army and come back in the Army within 90 days, you can come back in with the same rank you got out, and you'll get 2 of 3 choices. You can keep the rank you got out, you can get a choice of the job you want, or the duty station you want, where you want to go. That's the 2. He said, but you got to do it within 90 days. I said, "You sure?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "So just go home like you're getting out and get discharged. So, but then while you're home, make sure you join again within 90 days. And I said, "Is this going to work?" He said, "Yeah." So I went back to New Jersey and got discharged in Fort Dix in July '66. Mahoney came down and spent a couple of weeks with me when he was on the way home. A couple of the guys from the unit came down. So consequently, I partied the whole summer with my brother of '66. And when I'm counting the days, I didn't tell my mom I was going back in. I didn't tell my father I was going to go back in. So, days I would leave the house in the morning, say I'm going looking for a job and everything. I really wasn't looking for a job because I know I was going back in the service.
Yeah.
I'd go to the pool room and shoot pool all day and come back and tell Mom, I didn't find nothing today, Mom. So then I'm counting the days. So this was July. So August, all month August, I partied, hung out with my older brother. September, hung out with my older brother, And then I said, I better go. So I went to the post office and I took my discharge paper up there and I said, hey, I want to go in the Army. I want to re-enlist in the Army. They said, yeah. I said, I already been in. I got my discharge papers and everything. He said, yeah. I said, yeah. He said, what rank were you got out? I said, I was an E5, He says, okay. All right, good. He says, I said, it's true I can get my duty station? He said, yeah. I said, I want to go to Germany. He says, okay. So I re-enlisted and went back, getting ready to go back. And, I went down to Fort Dix, getting ready to process. And went back to Germany, and that would have been about September, October. I went back, but not to the same unit I was in.
Yeah.
But in Germany, they're close. On the weekends, you can go. So I went back to this unit, and it was a medical unit, and had these cracker box ambulances. We'd go to the range for the infantry guys and just sit out there if somebody got hurt. And I didn't like it, nothing like that there. But it was okay. And then that was like October. And then I was there about a month or so, and they called me one day. They said, go to personnel. And I said, for what? They said, I don't know. So I go to personnel. Now I'm an E5 now. I go to personnel, and he says, hey, we got orders for you. You're getting shipped out. You're transferred out to Vietnam. I said, I'm not going to Vietnam. I re-enlisted to come back to Germany, thinking I was going to come back to Germany for 3 years. So he says, yeah, well, where you at? I said, well, what are you talking about where I'm at? He said, you're in Germany, right? I said, yeah. He said, so the Army didn't lie to you. They gave you Germany. You're back in Germany. Now go back and pack your bags. You're going to Vietnam. So I said, you can't do this. They said, yes, we can.
Were you mad, though? I mean, you're laughing now.
I was upset, yes, because I was looking forward to partying in Germany for 3 more years, But really, I didn't know what Vietnam was. I knew there was a war going on over there, but, I'm in Germany partying every night, so.
Wow.
So I packed up, and that was my first trip to Vietnam. I shipped out to Vietnam.
Wow.
Got to Vietnam, was assigned 25th Infantry Division, and as a combat medic, and I was an E5. Well, the E5's there now. Now you're going to get assigned. I got assigned to a line company, an infantry rifle company, and in the rifle company, they would have 4 medics. They would have, at E5 was the senior medic, and each platoon had a medic. Could be a private PFC. So I was assigned to a line company, A company of the 2nd Battalion.
And where were you? Where did you?
Coo Chi was the base camp.
Okay, that's what I was
Coo Chi was the base camp for 25th.
Okay.
And I was assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 27th Infantry Wolfhounds. And I was assigned to A company, was the first company I worked with as a senior aid man. And then it was just, you go out and do your thing out there. And I bounced between, and then at that time they were working in battalion size operations. So A, B, and C company would all be working together. And so if one company would be lead company, so if the medics got hurt and killed in makeup, you would bounce up and take that. So I bounced back from A company to C company for the first 2 months, maybe 3 months. And that took me into 67, early part of 67. Then about April of 67, they call me and they say they're forming a new platoon, a new element. And it was going to be a reconnaissance platoon, and it was going to be an intelligence platoon, and they called it C.R.I.P, Combined Reconnaissance Intelligence Platoon. And it was going to be 25 riflemen and 1 medic. And they were going to take 25 riflemen, Vietnamese Army, and mirror us. We have the same weapons and work together as a 50-man element. And this was to start letting the Vietnamese Army take over, more control over their war. So, but we didn't live on Cu Chi. We moved out of Cu Chi to a town, a Vietnamese town about 15 miles away from Cu Chi. We actually lived in the town in the MACV compound. Now they had some American soldiers, MACV, and that was military command, Vietnam, and they were intelligence guys. It was an intelligence compound. And we just lived there for housing and food purposes. But we worked out of there. Mm-hmm. And so that was, a big difference from line company, because now we're working on daily missions of intelligence, and we're going out looking for stuff and not necessarily looking for the contact, but looking for the info and bringing it back.
And when you said combined, so were you side by side?
Yes, that's the way it started out. Mm-hmm. We'd go with the ARVN soldiers and us. We would go on combined on a mission, joint mission. But there were many times we went on a mission ourselves. They went on their mission.
How was communication? Did they speak English?
Yes. No. They didn't speak English, but we had interpreter. Okay, like scouts. There were like the two guys. They spoke English and Vietnamese and all that. Okay. But they didn't speak English. And we lived in this compound, and they lived in a compound right next to us. So a lot of times, that's the way it started out. We were going on joint mission. And the bottom line was, they were our eyes and ears, because they knew the country. A lot of them were defectors from the enemy forces and came over. So they were the scouts. They knew what to look for. They knew the villages. When we go to the hamlets, they would talk to the people, interrogate the people. They looked for the booby traps, all that stuff. So they were our eyes and ears, and we were their firepower.
Okay.
That was the way it went, basically, because we had the weapons and the techniques and all this. Mm-hmm. So that worked out good. I mean, it worked out well. We had a good success rate on our missions. Our missions were very successful. And that started in like April of '67, and went all the way through until we never got a man killed. Had people wounded. Nobody ever got killed. Our missions were very successful because they were small targets, soft targets. We'd go out for no more than 7 people, 10 people. We didn't go out looking for nobody, but we might run into a group. And that went on, and then at the turn of the year, and the exchange of people coming and going and stuff, a couple of lieutenants went and came. And at the beginning of '68, end of December '67, '68, Tet Offensive started, and that was the big offensive. And then come back in February of '68, we walked into an ambush. Now, we weren't working with the ARVN platoon any longer, because in December, when Tet broke, the Vietnamese Army pulled their soldiers back to their units. Oh, okay. So we were alone, and we did well. And then in February 11th of '68, we walked into an ambush. We went out on a routine mission. To this day, we don't really know how many went out. I mean, I always say 20, because there was about 25 of us. But about 4 or 5 days before that, we had got in some heavy contact. 4 or 5 guys got evac, and they hadn't been replaced. So we went on a mission, small mission, going out looking for 3 or 4 people. And we went out, and we ended up hitting a force of like 200. And so,
Of enemy?
Yeah. And so they had us pinned down for about 5 hours, something like that. And so we lost 10. 10 got killed, and 4 or 5 got wounded. So I always say 20 of us went out. Some of the guys at the reunion say there was only 18 of us. So we only can count for about 20, and that would have been about right, because 5 days before that, we had 4 guys wounded. They were medevac, and they weren't replaced. So, and then that was the end of the platoon, but I was getting ready to come home. That was February, and I was scheduled to come home in March. And so I came home. I stayed out there until I came home in March. Then I left Vietnam. I had orders for good story here too. I'm out processing of Vietnam after a year of Vietnam. I'm back in the rear in March, the end of March, and I go up to personnel to process out, and I hear somebody yell across this Quonset hut, which was personnel up in the rear in Coochie, Lenny Brooks. And I said, who the heck is calling me? Lenny Brooks. And I look around, and there's a guy from Passaic, New Jersey, Butch Pellegrino, went to high school with him. We lived here, he lived across the park, used to play ball with him and everything. He said, yeah, your mom told me you were still over here. I said, Butch, and he's a clerk. And he said, what's up, man? I said, man, I'm on the way home, man. I'm getting out of here. He said, yeah, where you going? I said, I got orders for Fort Hood, Texas. He said, oh, no, that ain't good. I said, what do you mean, Butch? Now, this is the last of March. I said, what do you mean, Butch? He says, you're going to Fort Hood? I said, yeah. I said, to the first cab. He said, the first cab is coming over here in September. I said, surely, now this is March, I said, surely I'm not coming back. He says, Lenny, don't believe them. When you get there, they're going to tell you, you're not coming back. You're not going. He said, but you tell me any unit that got an experienced combat veteran, and this unit's getting ready to go to combat, and they're not going to take you with them. He says, so don't believe that. I says, well, change them, Butch. He says, I can't change the orders. He said, but I can tell you what you do. He said, you going home to see your mom in Passaic, in Jersey? I said, yeah, Butch. He says, you're home for 30 days? I said, yeah, Butch. This is, we flew out the day Martin Luther King got killed. So this is April of 68. So, because we didn't know he got killed in Lantis, California. They told us he had got assassinated. So I go home. He says, when you go home, he says, go down to Washington, D.C. He says, go in the Pentagon, the bottom floor of the Pentagon. That's where all the branches is, the medical branch, the commo branch. He said, go to your medical branch. And he said, you think of the biggest reasons why you can't go to Fort Hood, Texas. So I said, okay. He says, unless you just want to come back over here. I said, no, I don't want to come back over here. So I go home, and then, of course, MLK got killed. They were riding in D.C. So I get one of my partner's cars. I got to go down there, right, because I got to get this changed. And so I borrow one of my buddy's cars. I drive down to D.C. I go down in civilian clothes. I have my uniform in my bag. I go in there. I change. I go to my branch. He says, what's up? I said, man, I just came back from Vietnam, and I got orders for Fort Hood. And he says, yeah, how can I help you? Now, this is the assignment branch for medics. I said, man, you know what? I said, my mother, I just came back from Vietnam, man. I've been over there. I said, my mother was sick, and she almost had a nervous breakdown. And I says, man, I can't go to Fort. I didn't tell him I knew the unit was coming to Vietnam. I said, I can't be stationed in Texas. I says, can you find any place closer to New Jersey for me? I said, because I don't know how she's going to take it. Me being away from home after Vietnam. She didn't take Vietnam too good. He says, I hear these stories a dime a dozen. I says, man, this is for real, But now I am an E5, so, He says, well, I'll tell you what. Go down to lunch, come back after lunch, and go down the hall to the cafeteria, eat lunch, come back. I'll see what I can do for you. I said, okay. So I come back. He says, look, I got 3 places for you, right? He says, I got Fort Meade, Maryland. Well, I know Maryland's close to Jersey. I said, well, I don't know about that. I heard about Fort Meade. He says, okay, I got Fort Lee, Virginia. Right, close to home. I'm saying, that's close. I says, what doing there? He says, I don't know, some kind of medical unit or something. I don't know. I said, I don't know, because I'm trying to get like Fort Dix, New Jersey. That's only 45, 50 minutes from now. So he offered me 2 good ones. And he says, well, the only other thing I got is West Point, New York. I said, West Point, New York? I said, that's a college. He said, yeah, it's the military academy. I said, there ain't no soldiers up there. There's students and all that. He says, yeah, but there's soldiers up there, in support of the students, like the hospital, and the active Army soldiers, the hospital, the range, the MP company. And I says, West Point? I said, I'm a college student. Now, I know where West Point is because in high school we used to go up to Bear Mountain up there, on class trips. And West Point is like 45 minutes from the door. And I says, I don't know about that, man. You know, knowing I'm going to take it. He says, well, that's it, Brooks. You know, take it or leave it. I says, I'll try West Point. So consequently, I got like 45 minutes away from the house. So I got out of going to Fort Hood to this infantry first cav unit that was going to Vietnam, you know. So I was at West Point for a couple of years there. So that would be like 68, middle of 68. And then I got married up there, met a young lady up there, and got married. And then that was there 69. And then in August of 70, I went back to Vietnam.
Oh,
And that's how, because I was assigned to the hospital in West Point. And it was. In the hospital was students, cadets, and a lot of military retired generals and all that lived in the area.
Yeah.
And I'm just coming back from Vietnam, and I was wild and woolly and everything, and you know. And then they sent me in the hospital. I never worked in a hospital. I had a hospital in the West, but I was a combat medic. I was with the tankers in Germany in the field. I'm in Vietnam with the infantry. Then they put me in a hospital at West Point, and it was, you know, you had to be politically correct and everything to work in the hospital. I refused to get a haircut. You know, you can't talk to the cadets, you know, even though they're patients. The ward master, what are you doing talking to the cadets? Because they didn't want the cadets talking to the enlisted. They're segregated up there. The cadets are in their barracks and all that.
Was that kind of an elite? Was it considered higher than you?
Oh no, they're students though. See, they're not in the military. They're students,
right?
But they're military academy.
But they're trying to keep you separate.
Yes, they keep you separate. In fact, their barracks are separate. You can't even go up in there. It's all blocked off and everything. When you're walking down the street, you can't go up in there. They got their own barracks, and they don't associate. They don't come out of their barracks. But you would contact them in the hospital if they were sick and everything. So they put me like on the orthopedic ward. So they get broken arm, broken leg from playing sports. They'd be up there, and I would talk to them. You know, hey man, what's up? You know, and of course the hospital staff didn't want us talking to them. You know,
did they not want them hearing about Vietnam, or just didn't?
They didn't want you to hear about nothing to discourage them from being in the military. They might hear sourpuss that's bad mouth in the military, anything. So it wasn't just Vietnam. In fact, I was the only one in the hospital at that time coming back from Vietnam. So they screened their people, I'm sure. I got there by accident by going through D.C. and getting assigned there. I found it strange when I got there. Now this is, 68. I'm the only one in the hospital from Vietnam, a Vietnam vet, out of the Corps. I mean, it was a small hospital and everything, you know. And so only 5 floors and all that, 2 operating rooms, and all they did was elective surgeries and all that. It was just there for the cadets, and they all retired. Generals and stuff.
What was going through your mind while you're in a place like that? After
I didn't
Vietnam?
know. I didn't. I just couldn't adjust to it. You know, I says they wanted you to wait on these guys, and they're not even in the army. They're students. You know, and I, you know, go do this and go change their bedpan and all that. So I'm not waiting on these guys hand and foot. You know, and I wasn't. I had never worked in a hospital, even though my MOS was this. I was just rowdy, and then a captain male nurse got assigned there, Captain Pete Gurney. He was from Vietnam. He was the nurse in Vietnam, the male nurse. So he was the same way. Captain Pete, he couldn't identify with this. Come on, I'm not babysitting these kids, you know, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not babysitting these kids. And they said, well, that's your job and all that. And I said, so we didn't get along with the hospital people. Had a chief nurse called Colonel Jarmer. Jarma was her name, Colonel Jarma. And she just, so they took me off the wards, they took Pete off the wards, and he was a nurse. They had 2 ORs up there. They did elective surgery Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Just elective surgery. Any major surgery was sent down to St. Albans Hospital in New York, the Navy Hospital. So she said, you guys just ain't fitting in. Talking about me and Pete. She says, I'm tell you what, I got a new job for you. The ORs was on the 5th floor. And next to the ORs was the recovery room. Well, there's nobody in the recovery room. They only do elective surgery Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. She put Pete, the nurse in charge of the recovery room, and me, the NCO in charge of the recovery room. And what happened is, I came on orders. I came there as an E5. But in transit, I got promoted to E6. So Pete's the OR nurse, recovery room nurse. Brooks is the recovery room NCO on the graveyard shift, 11 to 7 at night. So
There's nobody in there.
right. Right. Right.
What did you guys do?
So, well, we watch Johnny Carson every night, late show, late show, and the early show, and play cards with each other and stuff. So that was just until she could find out what to do with us. I mean, we just didn't settle in. Well, of course, us roaming that hospital at night, we knew every room, every crick, every cranny, then a new mess sergeant came in, Sergeant Cooper in E7. He was a Vietnam vet. So he came in, yeah, but he was in charge of the dining hall.
Mm-hmm.
He would come in at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, to get the breakfast and stuff ready for the patients. Of course, we were tight. So every morning, me and Pete would go down around 5 o'clock and eat steak and eggs. Then run back up to the recovery room before 7 o'clock, before Colonel Jarmer come, and then we leave. And it was going smooth. She just said, "We don't want you doing nothing in this hospital." Our only job was at 2 o'clock every morning on Ward 4, was the women's ward and pediatric ward. And they were still using tank oxygen. So me and Pete's job was every morning at 2 o'clock, we'd have to go down and change out all the oxygen tanks, take them down to the basement, and bring up full oxygen tanks and hook them back up. That was our job. And we were going smooth. We weren't bothering them. They weren't bothering us. And then, but Pete was a nurse, And so the emergency room up there, they have a lot of accidents and stuff up there on the highway. So Pete would go down, we go down to the emergency room to help out, if they were overloaded or something. Because I was a medic, and I was more closer to emergency room medicine than ward medicine, So we go down to help, but the doctors had strict instructions that me and Gurney were not supposed to be down there. So we go down and help when there's a big wreck on the highway, because they had a lot of volunteer fires in all departments, and they would send a West Point ambulance out to help them out, So there was one night, snowstorm, there was a big wreck up on 9W, and we went down and we were walking through the hospital, and we heard them in there talking about getting ready to take the patients in from the accident. So they needed ambulance support from some of the communities, volunteer. So they had the old Bonneville ambulance there. So Pete tells this doctor, he says, "Me and Brooks can go out and help him, He says, "No, you guys ain't supposed to be in here." And he was a young doctor. So Pete says, "What do you mean I ain't supposed to be in here? I'm a captain nurse. I'm a nurse. What are you talking about?" He says, "Hey, man, don't bug us and all that there." And he says, "Well, we can go. If she don't mind us helping out, He says, "Well, we just got standing orders. You guys ain't supposed to be down here." So he says, "Okay." So Pete took the keys to the ambulance. He said, "Come on, let's go." We went up there and nothing. We got there. They had it all under control. We were coming back, and Pete wants to take a shortcut through the park, and we hit a tree with the ambulance. And of course, that was the end of that. And, a week later or something, we had to get the ambulance towed back to the she's talking, what you guys doing out there? Who gave you permission? And about a week later, we were getting off at 7 that morning, and they call up there and says, "Hey, Brooks and Gurney, Colonel Jarmer wants to see you in the office before you guys go home this morning." So, whatever. So we go down there, and I go in first, right? And so me and Peter sitting out there, and they call me to go in. I go in, I report to her, "Yeah, Colonel, what's up?" She says, "Since you've been here about 2 years now, and actually about 18 months, 19 months now, and you haven't been too much of a team player since you've been here and all that." And I said, "Okay, what's up? Let's come on, get to the point, Colonel. What's going on here?" She says, "Well, you're just not the type of person we want working in this facility and everything." She reached down her drawer and she pulls out a stack of papers. She says, and you know, you just invented a TV. I said, what is that? She said, this is just stuff on you. I said, that ain't mine. Yeah, I ain't did all that. Come on, come on, come on, come on. So she says, well, here, take these. And she gives me a paper. She says, report to personnel before you go home. You know, our personnel was in different buildings. I said, what is this? I said, you know, further ordered to the Republic of Vietnam and all that. I says, oh, nah, this ain't me. I said, you don't know. I just came back from Vietnam. What are you talking about?
Oh my gosh.
She says, take it up with personnel. Get out of here. I said, all right. I said, I'll be back. I ain't going nowhere. You know? I go out, Pete's out there. What you want? What you want? What you want? I said, man, look at this, Pete. They trying to send me back to Vietnam, man. What's going on here? He said, oh, that's ridiculous. I said, yeah. And me and Pete would go to breakfast. And he says, don't go home yet. He says, wait for me. And Pete goes in there. He comes out.
Did he get ordered to Vietnam as well? Oh my gosh.
So I'm cursing and everything. Pete says, oh man, just be cool. Because he says, that's all right. You know, because now Pete was in Vietnam. He was a nurse. He was up on the South China Sea in a hospital when he was in Vietnam. I'm down there in the bush. So he says, that's all right, Brooks. He says, we get back over there. I says, man, I'll probably end up in an infantry outfit again, you know. I said, come on, Pete. He says, well, I'm going to the hospital, and I'll send for you.
Oh, my God. Did that work?
Never heard of Pete Gordy again in my life. And I went back to Vietnam. So that's when I did my second tour in Vietnam with the first cav. And lo and behold, I went back to Vietnam, and I was assigned to the first cav and a infantry battalion. Only thing that saved me from the jungles and everything, I had got promoted to E6. See, and E6s didn't beat the bush. Because your senior aidman was the E5. And then your lower aidmen were privates and all that. So when I got back, I was in E6. So they said, well, your job on the E6, you would stay in base camp. You wouldn't be assigned to a rifle battalion, rifle company. You stay in base camp. I was in the rifle battalion, but I wouldn't be going out. And I said, no, because staying back would have been the same thing. You're in base camp, but you're holding sick call and all that stuff. And I said, no, this ain't my stick. But in between the action areas and the base camp, you had fire bases. Okay, and nowadays they call them pods or something. And so I told the captain, the battalion surgeon, I said, listen, I says, you know, I done been through this and did this. And I said, one of my things was when I was in the bush, when I needed medical supplies, when I was under fire, it took a while to get them in there. Because every night, I used to have to call back on the radio, and they'd send my resupply out the next morning. I says, what about putting me on the fire base in the middle? And then, when the guys get in contact down here, I had a small GP tent of a lot of supplies. I can put them on a helicopter right there, and they can take them out and drop them to the guys in the bush. And he says, yeah, that'll work. So that's what I did. I went to the fire base, and the fire bases used to move.
But had that not been procedure before until you mentioned it? Because that makes sense.
No.
And you knew how it was, so.
Yeah, and then he bought it, and the colonel bought it. You know, he said, yeah, that's cool. So I talked to the battalion commander. This story will come later with Colonel Malloy. He was the battalion commander, and I was on the fire base. So that gave me closer to the troops. And I wasn't holding sick call on a bunch of crybabies coming in there talking about their foot hurt and their in base camp. Out here, I know, you know, these soldiers out here are in the thick of it. And, you know, I know the feeling when you need a dressing and you ain't got it, but you can get it quick. So what happened when they hit a big contact, if they used a lot of medical supplies, the colonel in the Charlie Bird, he would come back to the fire base. I just throw some bandages on, he'd take it back out, and he can kick them out to the medics on the ground. So they
were you in touch with other medics that were out in the bush? I mean,
I went out there. Now, I was in touch. That was part of my job, too, when I was on the fire base. You know, periodically, I'd go out to see how they're doing, because I was in E6, and these guys were privates and all that. So I'd go out, you know, if they were in a down posture, maybe for 6 hours or something, and the colonel was going out to check on them, I'd ride out with the colonel and go out and check on the guys. Hey, you getting everything you need? How you doing? You know, getting a little up and everything. Then sometimes when they hit big trouble and the medic got killed or the medic got wounded and get out, that meant that platoon didn't have a medic, so the colonel would come by the base and pick me up and take me out, and I would go out and work with that platoon. And some days I'd have to stay out overnight, 2 days, 3 days with that platoon until they got a replacement medic in.
Was that hard? Was it hard for you, or did you feel, had you changed because you had been out there before, did you feel hardened to all of that, or did you just feel, I mean, because you couldn't be afraid. I mean, how, that you were able to go, you know.
No, it was easy, really, because I know what they were going through down there. And
So that made a difference from the first time around.
Oh,
The second time,
yes.
that's what I was wondering.
Yes.
What was going on differently in your head when you went back?
I knew how tough it was on them out in the bush. And, you know, you can't have a platoon out there without a medic, you know, so if one get wounded. So I went out, and the colonel would take me out, and he'd say, Doc, I might have to leave you on the ground overnight and all that. I said, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. So, no. And then there was still just an itch inside of me to be with them.
That's what it sounded like. It sounded like that's what didn't work at West Point, was that you were too cut off from what you had been doing.
Yeah. I wasn't a hospital medic, and then in my whole career in 25 years, I never did work. That's the only time I was assigned to a hospital and worked in a hospital was that little stint at West Point. Then I went to Vietnam, and the second tour I did it, and we'll talk about that later, the Vietnam thing. I left Vietnam, and I went there August 70 to August 71 was my second tour. And I went back to New York, West Point. My family was up there, my wife, and at this time 2 children. And so we packed up out of West Point in 72, and I went to, from West Point, I went to, West Point, I went to Fort Carson, Colorado. Fort Carson, Colorado. And
you moved with your family?
Yeah, family. We all went there to Fort Carson, Colorado, and we stayed there. We only stayed in Fort Carson a couple of years. I went to Fort Carson in September 71 to December 73. But in between September 71 and December 73, me and my wife split, bad times, didn't get along. Now this is Lulu's sister, okay?
Okay.
Okay, because that's the one I married in New York, Lulu. That's why I became part of the Dye's family when I was up at West Point.
Was it hard because you were doing the Vietnam service and trying to handle a marriage at the same time? Was it just?
No.
Okay.
No.
You don't have to go into that.
No. That was just we didn't hit it. We just didn't hit it, and but there was 2 children, 2 girls. And I got custody. I took custody of the 2 girls. Okay, we were out there in Colorado, and my wife at that time, she was homesick for her family in New York, large family and everything. She wanted to be back there with her mom and all that, and so consequently, she did go back. She went back and stayed with her mom and left the 2 girls with me. And then the girls were with me for almost a year, maybe, you know. And then I came on orders for Panama. So.
For where?
For Panama.
Okay.
Okay. And that's just a 73.
Okay.
This was December of 73, because I was in Colorado, 71. Then December of 73, I came on orders for Panama. Now the 2 girls were still with me. My daughters were still with me. And in December of 73, I couldn't get housing in Panama, 6 months waiting. So I took my 2 daughters, my 2 oldest girls, and I took them to my mom's house in Jersey in December of 73. They stayed with my mom. I went to Panama, and I got quarters like in May, June of 74. And then I flew back up to the States and picked up the girls, and they came down with me. And then right around there, right after that, me and my first wife got divorced, and the girls always stayed with me. They never went back. They always stayed with me, my two oldest girls. And so then we stayed in Panama. When I got to Panama with the two girls, I had met Gloria. She was doing housework and babysitting for a family there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in my travels from the motor pool back to my company every day at lunchtime. She would be outside with the kids that she was employed for. Gloria was. And I would always wave to her, hello, how you doing, and everything. And I see her out there playing with the kids and all that. So I knew my kids were coming down pretty soon. So one day I stopped and asked Gloria, I said, listen, I see the way you're with the kids and everything, these people's children. They were GIs, we were on post.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, do you have any of your family members or friends that would be interested in watching my children? They'll be coming down here in a couple of months. So Gloria says, well, yeah, you know. She says, how many kids you got and all that, and I told her. And so she says, well, it's when are your children coming down? I said, in June. They're coming. I'm going to get them because my quarters will be ready for them in June. So she says, well, the people I'm working for, they're leaving on the 1st of August, so I won't have a job. So I can do it on the 1st of August. She said, I said, but in the meantime, I have a cousin who's not working. So my cousin can do it from when they get here till June until the 1st of August. And I said, that'll work out. I met Gloria, I met her family, church girl, no smoke, no drink.
Mm-hmm.
Go to church on Saturdays, mama's good and all that. So I had met Gloria's family. And that's how it worked out. The kids came down, the cousin watched them for about a month. And then when the people that Gloria was working for went back to the States, Gloria started watching the kids. And then, of course, the romance came, you know, Gloria watching the kids, and romance came, and a couple of years later we got married, and then I had 2 more children with Gloria. So Gloria's been, you know, we've been married, I guess, 47, 48 years.
Wow, that's
something like that there.
Good.
And the 2 girls, they were small, because when I took them to my mom, my oldest girl was in kindergarten, and my middle girl was like 3 years old. 2 years
What were their names?
My oldest daughter is Sylvia.
Okay.
And my middle daughter is Rosalind. Okay. And then with Gloria, we had my 3rd daughter was Annie, Anne-Marie. Then the 4th one was the boy, Carlos. So I have 4. 4 and 9 grands.
Oh, look at that. Yes, congratulations.
So she's been with them, and, you know, basically Gloria, she's been with the kids her whole life. So then we stayed in Panama I went there in December 73, and we stayed there until 77. So it was about August, September 77, we left Panama. I got orders for Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And so we packed up. First time Gloria's ever been to the States. We go by the house, stop by the house. Gloria's freezing to death. You know, it's October. She's freezing to death. We buy her a whole winter wardrobe in New Jersey, and we go off to Lawton, Oklahoma, to Fort Sill. So we get to Fort Sill, stay in the guest house when we get there on post, and then I report to my unit. Well, here's the deal. I had in Panama, I was E6, but I came on a promotion list to E7. And so I was going to be E7 when I got to Fort Sill. So I came on orders to be the NCOIC of the operating room in Reynolds Hospital in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. First time I ever going to be in the hospital. Once again, though, it's the emergency room. So I'm not, you know, it's okay. I'm not afraid of an emergency room because I'm, all my life, that's what it was, emergency. Because in Panama, I was assigned to an infantry company, too. You know, jungle, JOTC, 30 days out in the jungle, all that stuff. So I'm just a field rat. So I'm going to I said, well, I'm getting up in rank now. I'm going to be in E7. I'm going to be in charge of the emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
So I says, it'll work. So I get there, and I report in, and the sergeant major's there. And once again, it's one of these things, not too feely good stories, you know. I report in. He says, oh, yeah. I says, what's up? I says, well, I'm Sergeant Brooks. I got my orders here. Sergeant Major of the hospital. So I got my orders here. I'm going to be the NCRC of the emergency room. He says, oh, those people can't get nothing straight. I says, excuse me? He says, that position's already been filled. I said, excuse me? He says, yeah, that position's already been filled. And I says, these orders are from D.C., Department of the Army. Oh, there must be a mix-up. This is after I walk in. So I says, okay, so what's the mix-up? He says, we already got somebody for NCRC at the emergency room. And I says, okay. So now, I'm going to be in E7, so it goes by slots. They got to have a slot for you to work. So I said, so if you filled this slot for the emergency room, Sergeant Major, where are you going to put me? He said, well, you know, I'm still working on that. And I'm saying to myself, now, you know, you're not talking to a private. You know, this story sounds fishy, but in the meantime, you can go down to TMC, that's Troop Medical Clinic, number 1. And you go down there and you see Spec 6, Leon, Specialist Leon. He's in charge of the Troop Medical Clinic. Well, specialists were in charge of the clinics. He was in E6. And it was Spec 6 at the time. But he was in E6. I'm in E6, but I'm on the promotion list to E7. So I said, okay. I go down and see Sergeant Leon. Very apologetic and everything. He says, man, these people over here, I don't know what they're doing and everything. I tell him the story. He said, yeah, I'd heard, and a sergeant was coming from Panama to take over the emergency room. He said, we all knew this. And he says, that's you. I said, yeah, they told me it's been filled. And he filled me in. He says, yeah, it's been filled after they found out who you were and all this here. And I says, oh, come on. He says, yeah, I know these people. So I said, well, he told me to come over here and work for you. And I said, but I'm telling you, Sergeant Leon, I'm on the E7 list. And you're an E6. So there's no way I'm working for you. I don't even know you, nothing against you. This is your clinic. I don't want to work here. However, there's no way I can come here and work for you. He says, well, I'm on the promotion list too. And I said, okay, to E7. He's going to get promoted to E7. Mm-hmm. But it goes by numbers. Mm-hmm. So my number was higher than his number. Mm-hmm. So once again, if we both got promoted, I still outrank him. Mm-hmm. And it's his clinic. This guy's been here 5-6 years running his clinic. That's his specialty. He's a 91 Charlie. He's an LVN. You know, that's his specialty. I'm a combat medic. That ain't my specialty, you know. And so he was a nice guy, you know, and he says, well, what are you going to do? I says, I'm going to get out of here. That's what I'm going to do, you know, like that there. And he says, well, they're going to let you out. I said, they ain't got no choice but to let me out. They don't have no position to let me know that. And I says, I'm not dealing with this. I'm going to call the Department of the Army. So I called the Department of the Army down, and I says, what is going on here? Get me out of here, you know. So what's going on? I don't like the tone here. Something's wrong, you know. So that was like October of 70, where am I at now? Carson was October 71. Mm-hmm. So Leon says, well, you can come down here every morning. He's got an office in the back. Mm-hmm. And he says, I don't expect you to come down here and work for me holding sick call and everything. He says, but I got an office in the back. He says, if you don't mind, you know, just to have someplace to rest your head at, he says, until you get this straight, you can come here to the TMC and go in the back door, the side door over there. And he says, you can help me. He says, man, my record section back there, my records and filing and all that, he says it's shambles. So he says, if you want to come in here and help me out with the paperwork shambling, he said, you ain't got to see no patient, you ain't got to do this and all that there. And he says, this is just until you get out of here, Sergeant Brooks. I says, sure, I don't mind that. He says, and you just come whenever you want. And he says, you know, if that Sergeant Major comes over here asking about it, I'll tell him, yeah, you're working over here and all that there. So, and he says, okay, he says, you don't even have to come every day. He says, you know, just call me every couple of days and see if anything came up or anybody looking for you and all that kind of stuff. So I went home and I did that, you know. I'd go, you know, every day, every other day for half a day. I'd go down in the morning, 9 o'clock, help him out with his paperwork and all that, and then I go back home. And I was working on getting out of there instead of complaining to DA to get out of there. So it took me, that was like October of 70, that was October of 77. It took me until August of 78 to get out of there. So I did that, just working with Leon, never went to the hospital, no formations. They never asked about me, the sergeant major, none of them ever asked about me. Leon said, yeah, he comes in, he's working for me in the back there and all that. And so I did that. And then in August of 78, Department of the Army finally got a hold of me and said, we found a job for you. And it's down in Fort Sam Houston, Texas. And you're going to the medical training school. And you're going to the combat medic branch. And you're going to be an instructor down there. So by now I've made E7. So of course they weren't looking for me in Oklahoma because they didn't want no more to raise no hell. Because now I'm a senior NCO, E7, and I ain't taking this, you know. So I went down to Fort Sam Houston, and I got to say, other than my Vietnam tours, it was the best tour of my life in Fort Sam Houston, Texas. Went down there, became an instructor in the combat medic course. Most rewarding, other than my Vietnam tours, because now I'm down here and we got the same privates and stuff coming through here to the combat medic school. And now, me having 2 tours under my belt of combat medicine, they're still running old Geneva Convention warfare down here. All the lesson plans are all, you know, Cold War lesson plans and all that. And I, along with a group of other guys, were the first youngsters coming down there from the Vietnam experience to be instructors. See, when I went through, we had the old World War II instructors and all this here. So there was a handful of us. There was probably about a half a dozen of us were the first ones to come down as instructors with combat experience. So it was very rewarding, very, very rewarding, because I said, now I'm in a position to teach these soldiers how to stay alive on the battlefield and how to keep their men alive on the battlefield. And this is firsthand knowledge. This ain't no books. This ain't no manuals. This ain't none of that World War II stuff and Korean War stuff. This is real deal, you know. So, did that. That was from October 77. That was August 78. That's when I got down to Fort Sam. And that was the most rewarding thing. And so they used to come in, and the classes, you'd have them in for, I think we taught them for 12 weeks. You would teach them for 12 weeks on, and then we were off 4 weeks. Yeah, we were off 3 weeks, 2 weeks. 12 on, in the classroom teaching them, then we go down for 3 weeks. First week, we was off completely. The next 2 weeks, we redoing our lesson plans and, you know, and then we get a new group in. We keep them for 12 weeks, go down, 12 weeks. So, you know, my spill was, and I was the E7. The teaching team was three enlisted soldiers. The E7 would be the team leader. That would be me. We had an E6 Bravo, 91 Bravo combat medic. Then we had an E6 91 Charlie clinical. So the Charlie would teach them the clinical portions of it, the shots and all that. And then me and the E6 combat, we teach them the combat aspects of being a combat medic. You know, the clinic go back, would teach the IVs and all that stuff, you know. So that was rewarding because we get them in, and our classes would be about, you usually would get in about 30 to 40 students per class. And they start, and, you know, you teach them and test them and all that there. And you know, my spill would always be, I was the team leader, and I just tell them all, I said, I'm going to teach you how to you pay attention in this class, and we're going to teach you how to survive on the battlefield. We're going to teach you how to keep your men alive on the battlefield. Your soldiers.
That was it was a good ending. I mean, a good way to, kind of a landing strip to take what you'd been doing and like what you say your stick is, that's your thing, and to be able to turn around and tell this to the young and experienced, so hopefully saving some more lives.
And then while we were there, I was down there about 5 years or so, and then while we were there, I was later in my last year or so, I guess, I was stationed there. I was put on, the colonel that was in charge of that division, combat medic division, took me and maybe 4 other instructors, and we went up and we rewrote all of the lesson plans. We sat up in the building up there for about my last 8 or 9 months there, just throwing out the old lesson plans and rewriting the real deals.
Wow.
And filming them and making films and all this here. So that was rewarding. So I did that, and then I came down on the promotion list for E8. Okay, so this was at Fort Sam till 83, May of 83. Then May of 83, I came down for E8, and I came down to get promoted as a first sergeant. So now is the good part. In 83, I got transferred from Fort Sam to Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Now, because of my rank as a first sergeant, I get my own company. And of course, it was a medical company, medical field hospital type company. And it was in Fort Belvoir. And I think I had like that company, I had like 160 soldiers in that company. And now, in the midst of all these years, we started getting the females integrating in. Because when we first went in, it was separate. It still was.
About when was when was that when the women came through?
Well, I didn't see women in my unit until it wasn't my first tour in Germany, the tanks. And my second tour was Vietnam. It wasn't then, you know. And then my third tour was West Point. So they had some in the hospital up there.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then my fourth tour was Vietnam, so I didn't see them again. My fifth tour was that Fort Sill fiasco. I didn't see them then. And when I was training, I went to Fort Sam. They were coming in. We had female students.
When you were
in
an
our
instructor.
class, when I was an instructor. So now when they started putting them in units was before that. The first time I encountered them was when I was an instructor, and that would have been 78. When I started teaching, we had female soldiers coming in. The classes were. Now they were separated, you know, the female barracks was over here, the male barracks was here. But then, while I was there, that even went down the drain. They incorporated the barracks. Females would be on the top 2 floors, and males would be on the bottom.
Would they be in classes together?
Yes.
So the training was the same?
Yes. But when I first went there, and when I did my training there, it wasn't the same. They had the WAC barracks, Women's Army Corps. They trained separately, and we trained here. But that's in 60s. But so the first time I ever encountered them was then. And that was good because I had female students in my class the 5 years I was an instructor. So then after the 5 years I was an instructor, I got my first job as a first sergeant in Fort Belvoir. And that was the field hospital. Now, the field hospital, I had 160, I think it was 161 soldiers assigned to me in the field hospital. And I had just as many females in that unit as I had males in that unit at Fort Belvoir, because it was a field hospital, one of these MUS hospitals that you blow up the bubble, you know, portable hospitals. And some of the, I tell you right now, some of the best soldiers I had in that unit were females. When it came to humping and working and running, but it was a hospital, field hospital.
Did you pretty much see, would you have seen all of the soldiers coming through? I mean, if you were teaching, or could they go all the way through and not have you as an instructor?
No. Once you got a class, you had them from day one till graduation.
Okay.
So you had them for 12 weeks. And they all didn't finish. You might start out with 40, a couple might fail out, a couple might medical out, and all that. So no, you picked up that class, you kept them until they graduated. Then you were down for 3 weeks. Then you picked up a new class and graduate. And the funny thing about that is all of that 5 years down there of teaching, Then when I went on, like to my company in Virginia as a first sergeant, where I got 163 medics. Everybody in that company is medics, you know. I never, after my teaching days, I never had a student, a soldier in my company. I was a first sergeant in Virginia. Nobody, in the 2 years I was a first sergeant in Virginia, none of them soldiers came through there were in any of my classes in Fort Sam. Then I left there. When I was in Virginia, the biggest thing there, they have a reforger. They take units and they all go to Germany and train. They call them reforgers back then. And they stay 30 days. So our unit picked up and went to Germany for 30 days and did field exercise with the soldiers, American soldiers in Germany for 30 days. So that was reforger, but it's a big operation because you got to move your whole unit. And the unit, the soldiers were there, and the profex, the professionals, the doctors and nurses, they had slots in your unit. But
Did you go to Germany? Would you go with those, when you said they picked up and went to Germany?
Yeah, we all went and stayed there like 35 days or something like that there. And then we came back. But now the professionals, the doctors and the nurses and stuff, they were all assigned to the hospital in Belfast. But then as our unit picked up and went to Germany, we had slots for doctors and all this. They would come and join the unit and go to Germany. So that was it. I did that for 2 years, first sergeant there. Then I got orders to go back to Panama as a first sergeant in Panama. And that would have been 1985. I was in Virginia, 83 to 85. And in 85, I went to Panama as a first sergeant. Same thing. I had a medical company in Panama. And in that company, we had an ambulance section that supported the infantry units. And then we also had a field hospital section. And probably the biggest things that went on down there, that was a good assignment. That was a good assignment because I did a lot of Central America. Because I have to send medical units up to Honduras. The reserves would come down to Honduras and all that there. And they didn't bring medics with them, but they would task my unit for medics. So I would send them up there. And then I would go up to check on them and all that there. And then we were down there, that was 85 to 88. They had a big earthquake in El Salvador. And so my unit, hospital unit, we picked up.
What year was that?
The earthquake, I was there 85 to 88. So I want to say the earthquake might have been 87. 86 or 87. And so I picked up my unit then, half of the hospital. It was a 210 bed hospital, field hospital at full capacity. And we took 110 beds and took them to El Salvador. So I went down there for that, for the earthquake down there and all that.
Wow.
So it was, that was good. And then that was 88. And that's when I retired. I came on the sergeant major's list to go to be a sergeant major, which is an E9. And I came, that's by selection. And I got selected to go to Sergeant Major's Academy. Sergeant Major School is in El Paso, Texas. Problem was, I was going to have to, it's considered a PCS, a change of station. So I was going to have to pick up my family in Panama and go to El Paso. The school's only 9 months. Then after 9 months, we were going to have to move again to someplace. Okay? And with all the moving, all the years and everything, that was okay. But my kids were, in high school. One had graduated, the other one's in high school, the other two. And so, I'm going to go to El Paso for 9 months, and I got to go wherever they send me for some hours. And I said, because I had to go to the school. So when you go to Sergeant Major's Academy, you come out one of two. There's two types of sergeant majors. You're either a staff sergeant major, which means you're going to get an office job somewhere, or you're a command sergeant major. And the command sergeant major is the one in the field with the troops. Now, all my career is in the field with the troops. But they don't tell you which one you're going to get. It's by the Army needs. So I tried to get slick with the Army. I was in Panama, and I says, I'll go to the Sergeant Major's Academy if you can guarantee me that I'll get a command sergeant major slot when I graduate. And they said, come on, First Sergeant, who you playing with? You know, I says, well, that's the only way I'm going to go. You know, I'm holding the Army hostage now. That's the only way I'm going to go. He said, it don't work that way, First Sergeant. You know that.
You tried.
So, yeah. So they said, no. And I said, well, I'm not going. They said, well, if you don't go, and it's true, that's refusing career advancement. Because she turned down a school. Because I'm getting a promotion school from E8 to 9. So I'm refusing career advancement, therefore you're forced to retire. I said, well, if that's the way it got to be, that's the way it got to be, you know. And then I was tired anyway. I told my wife I used to get up every morning, tying on, putting on my boots to go out there at dark 30 at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I'm expected to run 2 miles as quick as a 17, 18-year-old guy. And I said, this is killing me. And I complain, and she say, stop complaining, stop. And she says, the first morning you get up and say you don't want to go to work and complain, and I'm tired of hearing you say that. So every morning I get up at 5:30, I'll be lacing them up. And I say, oh man, I can't keep up with these youngsters and all. She says, you're always complaining. She says, retire. If you're going to complain to go to work, retire. So at that time I had 25 years, you know, and I was going to go for 30, but by not going to the Sergeant Major's Academy, that was just a cop-out, just to retire, you know. So I did. I put my papers out, and I retired at 25. You know, so.
But a full career.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
Intense. You weren't going a very easy route either.
Oh, no, yeah. Well, it was. It was easier as, and I say that because as you get up in the ranks, and I always tell the soldiers, my soldiers, that they made my job easy. My soldiers made my job easy. When I became a platoon sergeant of the platoon, their work made my job easy. I became a first sergeant. I had in Virginia, I think I had 161, and in Panama I had like 146. And you know, those 140 people, they're the ones who made my job. Their success in the unit, that makes my job easier. So that's what I tried to instill on my NCOs that I had working for me. I was a stickler on NCOs. I really was a stickler on NCOs, that if you weren't doing your job, you didn't need to be carrying the stripes. I can get anybody can carry the stripes, but you got to do the job. And I, you know, burnt a few bridges in that aspect, especially when I went to Panama. That company down there, when I went there, they were lacking in a lot of leadership, and it was all the NCO rank. You know, not the officers. The officers don't run the company. The NCOs run the company. So I got there, and I had a handful of NCOs in Panama. Panama is a luxury tour now. It's a leisure tour. I mean,
What were you in Cocoso? Where were you stationed?
Okay. Now, the first time I went to Panama, because remember I went to Panama twice, right? Now, the first time I was on the Atlantic side at Fort Davis, okay? And that was Cologne, the Cologne side.
Okay.
That's where I met Glory. Glory's from Cologne. Then when I went back as a first sergeant, I was on the Pacific side at Fort Clayton.
Okay.
Now, our housing area the first time was, I was assigned to Fort Davis, infantry outfit in Fort Davis, 410 infantry. But our housing was on Fort Gulick, which when we turned it over, that's called Fort Espionage now. And then when I went back the second time, I was a first sergeant, and our housing area there was in Fort Clayton. And my unit was Fort Clayton. And it is. Panama is especially you get the Pacific side. The Atlantic side, Cologne side was, you know, a lot of jungles and not as well. They didn't get the same treatment. The government didn't treat the people in the Cologne side like they do on the Panama side. The Panama side is beautiful. And if I didn't have all the grandkids and the children and everything else, our dream was to go back and live in Panama, to retire and live in Panama. Then when the grandkids came and everything else, and Gloria said, no, I'm not going to be that far away from the grandkids and all that. So we never made it, you know. But I had always had the desire to go back and live in Panama, you know.
Was there I was curious about internally, like when you stayed in after Vietnam, because I know after this point experience, but later on, did you feel people were reverent to you, or respectful of your experience in Vietnam? Or were they even aware of that, or was that part of your identity that you were?
Yeah, there wasn't much. See, inside the fences, you don't have much interaction
Okay.
with civilian folks. You really don't. You know, because like I said, as I went up in rank, I got housing. You know, the only ones that live in downtown were the lower ranking guys, you know, E3s, E4s, E5s. I wasn't even married back then when I was single. So all the time I got married, I had post housing, except for West Point. I didn't have post housing in West Point. That's small to me. So interaction really wasn't a big thing because we stayed on post. And on post we had everything inside the fences. We had everything. We had our own police department. We had our own grocery stores. We had our own clothing stores, the PX and everything. Had our own swimming pools, youth centers, bowling alleys. Everything was inside the fences. So, you know, you really didn't come in much contact with the downtown people and all that stuff. But most of the times, though, in those towns, those military towns, back then, they were all respectful of the military because half the town worked on the post.
Yeah.
You know, so no, there was no. And then my towns were big towns because I was in Colorado Springs. See, I was in San Antonio, Fort Sam. I was in Fort Belvoir, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., right in front of Richmond. So I was in big towns. Cowtown was Lawton, Oklahoma. And it showed. That was the bad experience, Lawton, Oklahoma. See? So,
Yeah.
so no, you know, it was okay. I never, and even with the Lawton incident that I had, there never was, I could never put my finger on something and say it was racially motivated. I couldn't even say that about Lawton. Because this guy didn't see me before I got there. It was just one of these things, I think, a good old boy system. You know, the preceding NCOI left, he had somebody in the hospital, he wanted to fill that job. Department of the Army said, I'm going to fill it, and he filled it. You know, I really think that was it. I really do. And, but, no. So, all in all, I think in my travels, I think the communities, especially around the Army posts and everything, they was respectful of the people. Hell, half the town worked on posts.
Yeah, I could understand that.
And then the kids growing up, they all went to, see, back then they had schools, they actually had even the Army schools were on posts, you know. And then when we went overseas, it was Department of Defense school system, DODS. And not only did the military kids go there, the embassy kids went there. The civilian contractors that were contract workers for the government, their kids went there. And it was located on an Army post. One of those Army posts. So they were inside the fences. These kids.
What do your kids say about the do they ever talk about their experience of the military?
Oh yeah, I mean, like right now, their high school see, my oldest girl, she took her 7 high schools to get out of high school, 7 different high schools before she graduated high school. So yeah, she's in contact with a couple of the girls she graduated in Balboa, in Panama. My oldest girl graduated in Panama. See, my middle girl graduated here in Austin. We got here, she was a junior. She did her junior, senior year in Austin. So, but they still in contact with some of the kids from the Panama, especially. Panama, the Clayton trip, the second trip. Yeah, they're in contact with some of the kids there. They even got an alumni association online and all that stuff. So they're in contact with them. They loved it. But then, you know, my oldest girl actually graduated from Balboa High School in the zone. Because there was a lot of civilian people in the zone, the Zonians. All those people that worked for Pan Canal Company were civilians.
Yeah.
So there were generations of kids there. And there was one right across the street here when we moved. There were Zonians. One around the corner here was
Here in Austin? Cool.
Yeah, I mean, there were Zonians. And then around the corner, the Candrons, they were Zonians. Their kids were, parents and grandparents were not soldiers. They were pan canal workers.
Huh.
And they
Interesting.
went to high school there. So, yeah. So my kids are adjusted well on that. And then my youngest ones, their whole time. Now, let me see now. My baby girl started school in Panama, you know, but they all finished up here and everything. So now, they missed it. They loved living behind the fences.
Yeah.
You can live behind the fence and the kids can go out, go to the teen center, go to this bowling alley. They can walk around because the MPs were there riding around in the Jeeps and all that. Nobody's coming in because at the gate you had to have pass to get in. So outsiders, you know, strangers being on post, that was unheard of because the gates were.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a really amazing career.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. If I had to do it all over again and I had the youth to do it all over again, I'd do it all over again, you know.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, it sounds
No
like
complaints.
you stood up for yourself two places. You were savvy. That was in New Jersey.
Oh, yeah.
You had the street smarts
Yeah.
to get through it, and
Yeah.
you also really advanced for somebody who didn't care too much about school when you were 17. Look what you've done.
Well, I did, and then I even slapped myself about the school because after I went in, knowing I had left school in my junior year, and I knew I had made my mother very angry about that, so I did. First thing I did at my first duty station overseas, I got my GED and sent my GED to my mom until I finished high school. Not where you wanted me to finish, but I finished high school. And then I went along and I didn't take courses for 20-something years. Then when I got out, I retired here in 1988. In 1st of July 1988 is when I came to Austin. I came to Austin because my brother was living here. We had narrowed it down. Me and Glo had narrowed it down 3 retirement places. Florida, Texas, because we had been out in San Antonio and we liked it, or Seattle, Washington. Okay, Glo didn't want to go to Seattle, Washington. It rained too much coming from Panama, rainy season. I didn't want to go to Florida, too expensive. So we came to Texas. But we didn't want to go to San Antonio because it's too big and I still had 3 children in school. So my brother was living in Austin. Austin was the quiet secret then. So we moved to Austin. So, you know, and that's how we ended up here. Even then I met Nancy. I got the job. You know, I was here.
Yeah, that's what I want. Let me see what we got going. I want to hear about my. Sorry to interrupt. I was looking to make sure because my son was he's gonna come in 30 minutes.
Okay.
It's 4 o'clock. But I do want to hear. I'm sorry to apologies for interrupting you, but because since I did get to meet your friend Nancy before we started this interview today, Nancy, what was her last name?
Glass.
Nancy Glass. Okay, because she's going to be an important part. You know, she has been an important person in your life.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's why you have the
Oh, the beat
sculpture
goes
sitting
on,
in front of you,
and all the cutouts and everything.
yes,
else.
because we are definitely. I mean, I hope if you'll allow me to come back again.
Whenever
We need to, because I know there's a whole story that I still want you to talk about it. We have time. I want you to tell about how you got back involved after a break from your Vietnam
Yes.
buddies
Yes.
and with Nancy, and just if we have just to spend the next 15, 20 minutes if you can, and tell me how you got back involved and about Nancy, just to set the stage, and then the next time I'd like to just begin and talk about the Mighty 10
Yeah.
that you told me about.
So, all right, you ready to go with it?
I'm ready to go.
Okay, so retired here in Austin, 1 July, 88. Okay, got a job within 7 days. And I got a job as a security officer through the newspaper, as a security officer at the Dobie Dorm. Now, the Dobie Dormitory is a dormitory for the University of Texas, but it's not on the university grounds. It connects with it. And so it didn't belong to, it's a private dorm with UT students in it. So I got a job there, a security job there in 88. And so I worked there, night shift, and from July. I got it in July. I was here and I got it, within 2 weeks. In the meantime, we lived here in Austin, but a couple of blocks over. The same time I got the job there, Gloria went around the corner and got a job in Target's, walking right around the house. Still had kids in school, so we worked it out. Gloria go to work, in the daytime. I would work night shift, and somebody was always there at the house. I'd be there in the daytime and all that. So I worked for security at UT, one of UT's dorms, for a year. Then seen a application come up for security officer for the college, ACC, Austin Community College. And I said, well, I put in for it. So I put in for the security job. That was 89. And I went in for the interview, and I got the job, and I was assigned to, at that time, ACC only had 3 campuses in town. I got assigned to Riverside campus. And Riverside campus, I went down to interview, and Nancy gave me the job down there at Riverside campus. She was the dean at that time of Riverside campus. So that was 89. And then worked for security for about a year. And that's when we got a new college president in. And he came from up north, and he says he don't like the security. He want licensed police officers. So we had a couple of older guys in the security department, about 2, that had been retired police officers. So they already had their license. And Texas, like any state, I guess, once you go to a police academy and get your police license, it's good for life. Mm-hmm. So I went to the Travis County, and Nancy offered us security guys, didn't have no police license, a chance. If we wanted to, she'd send us to the Sheriff's Academy. We get our Texas peace officer's license, become police officers, and go back to the college and work for 2 years. She would, while we were in the course, it was a 12-week course, we would stay on the payroll. We'd get paid every 2 weeks. Our place of duty was the school. But we would draw a check for every 2 weeks for the 12 weeks we were in school. Then upon graduation, we have to come back and work for 2 years. And if we didn't, if we left prior to 2 years, we had to pay back the money we received, and
That's fair.
So so that's how I became. Then we converted over from a security department to a police department, and that was 89, I guess. And so I worked on that campus with Nancy from 89, and got promoted to sergeant, shift leader. I was the evening shift leader. The good thing about the community college here, there's no dormitories. So, and that's the worst part of college police is the dormitories. So there's no dormitories, so there was no third shift. So our shifts, we only had 2 shifts. So I went in from 3 to 10 every night. Classes would be over 9:30. At 10 o'clock, we put the alarms on the building and go home. So cleaners would come in. They had their own codes and all that. So I worked second shift, 3 to 10. And then I became she promoted me to sergeant. I was the second shift leader there, sergeant. And so I did that till 2000. And then we had converted over to a full-size police department here. But when we started, we had nothing, no vehicles, nothing. We had to rely on Austin Police Department to transport our prisoners. If we had a drunk driver in the parking lot or something, we arrest them. They'd have to transport, but we have to go down and fill out the paperwork and book them. So some nights I wouldn't get home until 12:30, 1 o'clock if I had to go downtown and book somebody. So it was good job. Easy job, soft job, no threat. But then the neighborhood down there got a little rougher over the years. And little gangbangers used to come cut through and all that there. But still, nothing, graffiti on the buildings, that kind of thing. So I did that, but I was getting older and everything. And I says, enough is enough, because they put a bus stop there. And that's what happened. They put a city bus stop on campus. Then we started getting the bad, rowdy crowd in. So I said, enough. And I told Nancy, I said, Nancy, I think I'm going to throw it in. So that was 2000. January 2000, and they said, "No, don't quit, don't quit." I said, "Yeah, I'm gone. I'm out of here. You know, I'm not gonna. You gotta be 35 years to get a retirement, and I'm not gonna get a retirement in 35 years. So I'm out of here." So I left there in January of 2000 because I had already made up my mind years ago that I'm gonna retire from work at 55. When I turn 55, I'm not going to work no more for nobody. Well, that didn't happen. So I retired from the college. I quit the college in 2000. And then I got a job with one of the local security companies, local computer companies. At that time, in 2000, they were all stopped popping up. You know, Michael Dell moved there, and Selectron. So I got one with a security company about 3 miles up the road. And it was a Selectron, and it was in-house security with them. And I did that until 2008. And at 2008, I turned 62, and I said the government's held my money too long, and I want my money. So I went out at 62. Gloria is considerably younger than me. She's 6 years younger than me. So she was still working. I went out at 62, nobody here. Well, actually, when I was working with Nancy at the college, I started taking college courses, you know. I said, well, you know what? I'm going to get an associate's degree, and maybe that'll encourage the kids to go to college and all that. So I did. I worked hard and everything, you know. And then I come up short. I'm like, I don't know, 12 hours short of an associate's degree. And then, even after I stopped going to the college, right, I said, I want to go back and get these 12 hours. And here we sit in 2022, and I'm 12 hours short of an associate's degree. But, you know, it worked out well. The kids all went. I got a couple with master's degrees. I got a grandson down here in U of H, you know, studying for his doctorate and all that. So, but I did. I quit working in 2008. And Glow was still working at Targets. And then, you know, I find myself doing nothing. But then I started devoting more time to the Wolfhounds, you know, getting the Platoon, finding them because I was here all day.
You started looking for the guys that you were with that 2-year period of the...
Because we had started reunions in 2004. And then by 2008, we had built it up to 12 or 13 and all that. So we started doing reunions. So that gave me more time to do this and everything. And then Glow was still going to work. She was working at Targets. I would stay here doing my thing with this here and all that, going to the reunions. And then in 2013, that's 5 years later, okay, my son, I had a son that was still trying to find his niche in life. My boy, he went in the Navy when 9/11 broke. He joined the Navy. He did a tour with the Navy, went on a cruise, was on an aircraft carrier, and then he got out. He got married. He was up in Virginia, and he got out. And I told him, "Stay in, boy," you know, and all that. But he got out. And he came back to Austin. Got with his friends, got into a lot of trouble and all that there. Okay, so. He had one child by his marriage, and then second boy came along, and that was his second child came along. So, but anyway, in 2008, I retired. Gloria was still working. In between 2008 and 2013, she was working. Then in 2013. The little boy that's here with us now was born. Okay, but my son was in trouble, and the boy's mother was in trouble, both at the same time when he was born. So they were going to put my little one here into the foster system. So we said no. So we took him, and he was born in 13. And when he was 2 weeks old, we took him in. And he's been with us ever since. He stays with us. And then after about a year or so, the son and daughter couldn't reconciliate or nothing. So we went through the courts and everything and got total custody of the little one here.
What's his name?
Cortez.
Cortez, okay.
Yeah. Cortez! come here, buddy. So he's been with us ever since. And then when he came in 13, my wife stopped working, and then we just take care of him. And so, you know.
Oh, that's beautiful,
Got to
though.
do what you got to do, right?
Yeah, but what a gift.
Come here, Tess.
What a grand. Hello.
Say
there.
hello.
Hi, Cortez. My name is Susan. We're actually give your granddaddy a hug, and it's going to be in
Come
our
here, buddy.
little.
She's going to take a picture. Sit around.
Take a little picture, and then because we're videoing here,
Look at the camera.
okay. So this is Cortez. So he's joining in our little video. We have a nice long interview with your granddaddy.
Okay.
It's nice to meet you. Nice to meet
Okay.
you.
It's nice to meet you, Jane.
Alrighty, you take
All
care.
right, buddy.
I'll finish up and let you have your granddaddy back in
Okay.
about 10 minutes.
Okay.
So yeah, he's been with us ever since then. So and it's a blessing. It keeps us both occupied with something. You know, she wanted to work a few more years, but we didn't need it. And the big thing about him, we finally went to the courts after a year. We kept him a year, and they called us back in. They said, your son and his mother are not gonna join or nothing, and he's got a choice. He's either gonna have to go into state care, or you guys want to take him. So we got him we didn't have to adopt him because of the blood thing. So they got the kinship program. So we got him under the kinship program. So there was not a need for adoption, but it's the same thing. You know, we got total custody of him and all that. And I was concerned with the medical portion and all that because now he has medical for life and all that. So, and then the pensions I get, the little pensions I get, not my retirement from the military, but from VA and stuff like that. Yeah, that can go toward his schooling and all that stuff.
That's beautiful that you could do that. I mean,
Yeah.
Leonard, that's
Yeah, so, you know,
wow.
that's what we do here, and we're just raising him. Now my son's still here. He lives here, and he lives in Killeen now, but he lives here, staying with another family, his own little family. But he's in his life. He sees them every weekend and all that there. You know, the mother, no, nothing on that. So, but we're good with it, and I wanted to get him on my records so he can be covered for medical. Because now we're at a point now. Me and the wife are at a point now. You know, it's not. I get little retirement check from the Army, and so we're both on Social Security, and I get a little VA pension for getting wounded, all that stuff. But none of that matters now. Of course, it's the medical that really kicks in. Everything is about the medical. If there's something material that we don't have right now, we don't need it. But
Good way to look at it.
But the medical, you can't place that. So that's the most valuable, most important thing we got going on right now. And it's the same thing with him. At least I know after we leave, he's covered until he's 18 or 25 if he's a full-time student, medically. And then he can use some of my benefits toward his education also, because he's born in Texas and all this. And Texas got some pretty good laws.
Yeah.
And then on my VA, he can use my VA too until he's 18 and all that. So this one, we're going to make sure he's taken care of. The other ones I don't worry about. My daughters, you know, my oldest daughter, she has one daughter, my oldest grandchild, Shantae. And Shantae is a airline worker for our stewardess, a flight attendant for JetBlue. Shantae graduated from the University of Texas. And her mother, my oldest daughter, also graduated from the University of Texas after Shantae. My oldest daughter graduated when she was like 38, 39 years old. She worked her way through. After Shantae graduated, Sylvia graduated or something like that. You know, Sylvia graduated, Shantae graduated. They both, my oldest daughter and her daughter, she only has one child, they graduated from UT. Okay, my middle girl, Annie graduated from Houston-Tolleson. That's at HBCU here in Austin. She got her master's at Lamar in Beaumont. Okay, now she works in the governor's office here in Texas. Annie, that's my middle daughter. And my baby, no, I'm sorry, Annie's my baby daughter. Rosalind, Boo is my middle daughter. Boo lives in Pflugerville. She has 2 children. One graduate, Maurice graduates this year from high school. Asia's in the 9th grade. She's married to a gentleman. He was in the Army, active Army, as a lieutenant. He only did his 4 years up here at Fort Hood, got out. But he's active in the reserves and National Guards. He's a light colonel or something. That's the middle girl. My baby girl, Annie, she graduated from high school, and she went in the military. She went in the Army for 4 years. She was a medic for 4 years in the Army. And then she got out, was stationed at Fort Hood here in Texas. She got out. She went to college. She graduated from Houston-Tolleson to HBCU. Then she got her master's at Lamar University in Beaumont. And she's the one that works for the governor's office.
Okay.
And the son, he did in the Navy. He went in the Navy. And, you know, I wish he would have stayed in the Navy because he's just married and had a young child. But he had other ideas. But he's here. He's in the area. He's working. You know. So it's good. Now, grandchildren, the oldest is Shantae. That's Sylvia. She works for JetBlue.
Okay.
After that is Taylor. Taylor's the spark plug of the family. Taylor is by my baby girl. Taylor graduated from high school, and he was like number 16 in his graduating class. So he got a full free ride academic anywhere in the state of Texas. Okay? And never played sports or nothing like that. He was just purely academic. So he chose the University of Houston. He graduated in 3 years because he did accelerated courses in high school. He started college in his junior year in high school. So it took him 3 years to get out of U of H. And then got ready to do, he graduated down at U of H in 3 years, okay? And didn't go into the master's program. He went straight into the doctoral program. Okay, and he's in biochemistry. So, and now he's on at the tail end of his doctorate in biochemistry.
Congratulations.
And then he's down there in U of H. He started to come back to UT, but he says, you know, I started in U of H. I want to finish at U of H. So he's in Houston, teaching a few courses and still working on his doctorate. His brother, Brendan just graduated from high school down there in Caolo, and he's here working down south, one of the towns down south. But he went to ACC for a couple of years, and then college wasn't his thing. He's still looking for his thing, but he's good. And then the other ones my son got an oldest girl. She graduated from high school. I got my granddaughter by my son graduates from high school in the spring. And my grandson by my middle daughter graduates from high school in the spring. And their birthdays is in the same month, but it's 19 days apart.
Oh, wow.
The same month. And that would be Angel and Maurice. All right, and then after that, we got Carlos Jr. That's my son's second boy. That boy's in his sophomore year in high school now, I think. And then after him would be my middle girl's daughter. That's Asia. Asia is in the 8th grade, big-time volleyball player, super big-time volleyball player, and Junior Olympics. She's been to the Junior Olympics
wonderful.
2 years.
Wow.
A couple of years ago up in North Carolina, and last year was down in Houston. So she's a big-time long jumper, real tall, and big-time volleyball player. That's Asia. And then Carlos Jr., and then after Carlos Jr. is Cortez. Then after Cortez is Carter. Do you get the drift on the boys?
I do. I'm getting it.
Carlos Sr., Carlos Jr., Cortez, Carter. So the only thing difference is the
Last letter.
last 2 letters.
That can be confusing, but for the teachers, maybe.
Oh, they are. but they don't go to the same school. That's the
Oh,
only
okay,
thing.
that's
They don't
good.
go to
All
the
right,
same school.
that could help out. Yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful
Yeah,
grandchildren.
you see his thought pattern there. Carter, Carlos, Cortez.
You can't shorten it,
No,
or you get real mixed up.
and they don't get mixed up either. This one, I'm the one
Oh
who
my
get mixed up.
goodness,
I'm the one who gets
Oh my
mixed up.
gosh.
So Carlos Jr., he's Little Los, okay?
Mm-hmm,
And then when I'm talking about him, he's Little Los. And then Cortez, he's Tez. So,
You did shorten it. Well, that's beautiful. That must keep you busy. And then you do, I mean, I think the reunion things that you have, I mean, it's like you've made a full circle. I mean, that's your direct connection with your guys.
yes.
I mean, it's like you are bonded back in Vietnam and East.
And you notice I don't say much about my second tour, say, but I've
That
never.
first one.
I think I've been to one reunion on the second tour, and that wasn't a small group reunion. That was like a division reunion when I was in the D.C. area or something like that there. So those, I'm only connected to my second tour because I was out in the fire base by myself. These guys were out in the bush, and I didn't really know them personally.
Right.
And the ones in the A station in the rear, I never went back there. So I'm in connection with about 5 guys from my second tour, from my medical platoon. But we didn't work together. I stayed on the fire base the whole time I was there, you know, and went back very rarely. And they would send the supplies out to me. I'd put them in a tent. Then I would take the supplies out to the guys in the bush, you know, and that was it. I
A
did that
little
for-
distance. But do you want to explain what your reunions, the Mighty 10, just to wrap this up, or would you rather not mention, you know, because if I know the reunions that you're doing, they're all dedicated
That's what
to
they
the
all
10
are.
guys that you lost.
Yes.
That you told me about
That's-
that earlier, and I just thought that might be a nice way to wrap up the interview,
Sure.
is to tell who they are, maybe if you can name every one of their names.
Oh, yeah.
And that way, that's how your reunions are going forward, and that's where we'll begin when we meet again.
Okay, we can just start that right now. If you want to
yeah,
start,
yeah, let's-
where's your starting point on that?
Well,
it's going to be, let's start it when I go to, okay. First part of 67 when I arrived in Vietnam, my first tour.
Right, and I may have someone, because I know, just to pause for a minute, my son will probably come here by 4:30.
Uh-huh.
So it's only about 10 minutes, but maybe someone either let him know to wait a minute. So I don't know what. somebody
Oh,
else-
okay. Well,
I don't want to interrupt. I don't want to interrupt the interview for that.
well, you don't have to wait. We can just get as far as we can right now,
Okay.
and then we can jump it.
Okay.
Because it's not going to be, I'm just going to introduce them and all that there,
Okay.
okay? So,
I think it's appropriate because it's where we
wanna
started,
start.
and I think we need to mention
Yeah.
these guys
Okay.
because this is what you're doing. And,
We can do that.
I know how important it is.
let's jump in right about, okay, I went to Vietnam, okay, first time I went to Vietnam, the first part of 67. Okay, went to the 25th Infantry Division, okay, 2nd Battalion, 27th Infantry, Wolfhounds, and base camp was Cu Chi. I worked with line companies, rifle companies, A Company, C Company for about 3 months, and then in March of that year, they formed the Recon Platoon, known as C.R.I.P. And the C.R.I.P. is Combined Reconnaissance Intelligence Platoon. In that platoon, it was made up of 25 riflemen and 1 medic. I was the medic for the 25 riflemen. We did not work out of Cu Chi, the main base camp. We worked out of a Vietnamese town about 15 miles west of Cu Chi, about 9 miles from the Cambodian border. The town was called Bel Tri. Vietnamese, it was called Kim Quam. But to us, it was Bel Tri, okay? In that town, they had a compound, an American military compound for MACV. MACV was the military army command of Saigon. It was nothing more than a intelligence place, and they had a small detachment of Camo in there, Camo guys, about 10 combo guys. They used it as a relay station, radio relay station, to radio to the front lines. But in there was MACV soldiers, okay, and we lived in that compound with them. But we had nothing to do with them other than we lived there. They housed us. Okay, we still record?
Yep, that's okay. We'll
Okay.
clear that.
Baby's hungry.
So we lived out there. There was 25 of them. Okay, and we have various missions, and we'll talk about the missions later. Some of them, yeah. But basically, it was intel missions. They give us a mission at night. It was all small. We'd go out to these various hamlets and everything, and carry out the mission. There was also our counterpart was 25 ARVN soldiers. They lived in the compound next to us. We went on joint missions together sometimes, most of the time. Then we did. So we did a lot of missions, and we had a lot of success in our missions. And they started about April of 60. You got it, babe?
Here, I got it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
They started about, like I say, in March of 67 we started. And we went all the way through, good success. And the biggest thing, and they're coming and going, we think about 75 people might have went through that platoon in that 9-month time frame. And then the missions got really hot in December of 67. Because the Tet offensive was building up then. And we lost our counterparts, the ARVNs. They were all pulled back to their Vietnamese units. So in 68, December of 67, and January of 68, we had some hot times then because we were working strictly solo. And the missions, we were encounter larger groups of missions when we went out. And so it all, in January 68, they tried to overrun us in the compound. And that's the film you got. And then the end of January, we had a lot of missions. And then the big one, 6th February, we had another big mission. And on that one, 25 of us went out. I always use 25 as an approximation. About 25 of us went out. In that mission, we got 5 wounded. That was 6th February. And then we went back out on 11th February, and anywhere from 18 to 20 of us went out on that mission. And 10 men got killed. And that's the 10 that we meet for, and that's the ones we want to memorialize, and that's the ones we want nobody to ever forget them. Okay, those 10 men were, okay, there was Lieutenant Embody. He was our lieutenant, okay, it was Michael Embody. He was from Canoga Park, California. He was the lieutenant. Our 3 squad leaders that day was Charles Eugene Youngblood. He was a sergeant, and he was from Shreveport, Louisiana. Okay, the 2nd squad leader we had that day was Bruce Holewater. Holewater's from Canton, Illinois. These are E5s, Sergeant E5s. The 3rd one we had that day was Donnie Joe Millar. He's from Burnsville, Mississippi. Okay, and then the other ones who got killed that day, I always go across the nation, so I can race. I start in California, and then I'll go up north. The 3rd one, I'm on 3 already, so the 3rd one would be Gerald Tucker. He's from Upper Grand Rapids, Michigan. Then we drop down. The 4th one's going to be Nix, right? Michael Nix, Robert Michael Nix from Dangerfield, Texas. Okay. The 5th one, we're going to come down. We're going to come down to, I already said Charlie Youngblood from Shreveport, so we're going to go down a little bit further and say Texas. We're going to go over to Louisiana. Now I'm going to say Ulysses Stewart, who was also a Silver Star holder from this battle. He was from Silver Creek, Mississippi. Okay. And then we're going to move over, and then I'm going to go, I said Donnie Joe Millar, he's from Burnsville, Mississippi. I already counted him. Okay. So then I'm going to go up, and I'm going to say Robert Hughes, right, from Canton, Ohio, from Westerfield, Ohio. Bobby Hughes. Okay, then we're going to go across, and I'm going to say Ralph Peters from Boonesville, Kentucky. Then I'm going to drop down and say William Joyner from Fairburn, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And did I hit them all?
Sounds like it. I think you did.
Okay.
Hold up there.
If not, I got it right here.
Just hold up their picture. And so now you all meet in the towns.
Yes,
and
we
that's where
started
we will
in
begin our next.
2004. Started gathering again. Gene Underhill, one of the members of the platoon, contacted me. And
Thank you.
we started the reunions in 2004.
Uh-huh.
And we want to cut it right there? Or are you going to take pictures of the gentleman?
Hold up. If you have the picture or the poster, hold up for the guys.
The 10?
Do you have that? Yeah. If you can-
Yeah, this one right here is probably
yeah, that
the
would be
best
a good one to, yeah.
This would be the
Yeah,
best
those, or even just, you can show what you've done, like the.
Well, this one here.
And that's where we end up here, because we're gonna get back to begin, that you created, and this was Nancy helped you with this
She
as well.
does it. Nancy does this.
So Nancy Glass, who we've mentioned before, she's the one that's been helping you with these memorials, and you take these, a picture, you put a, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said you've put an ad in the paper, a memorial
I can
ad.
give you a quick shot of that.
Yeah,
too.
okay.
Okay, you get this.
Got that. And these
Okay.
are the 10 guys.
And here would be, let me show you the first one I did. That would be on Charlie's page. Right here. Here's the, and this is a good one because they're both on the same page. Okay?
Okay.
Now, you'll see the one over here is the one from 1993. That was the 25th
Okay.
anniversary of them getting killed. And it was posted in their newspapers, their hometown newspapers, of all 10 of the men who got killed. Okay, that's 93. That would have been the 25th anniversary. This is the newest one from 2018. This is the 50th anniversary
Wow.
of Charlie's. But all of them have the exact same thing, all 10 of them.
I'm trying to get this. Okay. That's beautiful. And so you're in touch with their families.
Oh, yeah,
And
all
that's
10
where
of
we'll
them.
continue. Yeah, that's
All 10
great.
of them. I'm in touch with a family member of all 10 of them. So,
So they're not forgotten.
no. And there's all the pictures and all that, but these are the guys that didn't get killed. See, this one here is Donnie's. This was the 50th, and some of the newspapers went, super big on them, some of them didn't. This is Donnie's. And the papers would send them back to me, the clippings, when they put them in.
So that, I'm looking at the vidette. That's nice. Okay.
And they all got them.
I will focus on that when we get back together again.
Yeah. And there's other pictures, and this is the platoon roster. This is my Mighty 10 book here. This is the Mighty 10 book. And it got everybody, and the other ones too, just the 10.
Did you put that all together?
Yes,
Yeah.
over the years.
Wonderful.
These were the originals. When you get the posters down, these are the originals when they first came out. These posters, the etchings from the wall, their names.
Oh.
Okay, but now they make a different one. But these, I keep these. I don't put the newer ones in there. That's the old, when the wall first opened, that was the ones they put
The
in.
Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C.
This is the etchings from all of them that I did over the years. And you've seen on the website, they got the pictures of headstones of all 10 of them and all that there.
Yeah. Well, it's just.
And these are some of the guys that did. They're still around. Some of them passed away and all that there.
Yeah.
But this is, I tell you, J.C. Story and Schubert, I'll talk about them later.
Okay.
Schubert Gordon in my platoon, he's the guy who broke me in, who trained me when I first went there. Joe Schubert, he got killed 6 months later or something like that. So I got his stuff in here. This is when the night they tried to overrun us in January. I told you there was a signal detachment in there. These 3 guys got killed in the signal detachment. We pulled them out, and I go up and I visit their window wall too. They're not members of our platoon, but
Mm-hmm.
they were there. And here's a list. But that's on the webpage. All of that's on the webpage.
Well, your webpage is Capper.
625.com.
Why Capper?
Kappa625.com. Because when I said I'm going to retire at 55, I'm going to stay at the track and be a handicapper on the horses.
Is that what
And
that's
it's stuck
from?
with me ever since.
Oh, that's great. All right, well, should we wrap it up there?
Okay, well,
Okay, how about sit down so we can get that sign off here. We'll get, I mean, it's tremendous. I mean, I feel, you know, talking with you, I have to, honestly, this is the first time talking with a medic, that I've interviewed a medic with Vietnam, a combat medic, and I've heard people talk about medics, because when they're on the fields, I mean, their medic is who's there. You know, they say, we don't know how they made it out to the field,
Right.
but they're out there next to us taking care of us,
Yeah.
you know. But, so to be able to turn around and speak to a medic and hear you talk about the men, it's, I mean, I feel the closeness that you have to them and their
Oh, yeah.
families, and that bond from that first, like you said, your first deployment, but what you're doing for them now, because you knew their names, you had pictures and films that help you put this all together. But I'm just saying, sitting here, I feel sort of goosebumps of feeling a presence of all the guys.
yeah, that's what we want. We want
That's what you're
the
doing.
families to know they never forgot.
Yes.
It all started with these pictures. This is what it was. Every one of these pictures, these little portrait-like pictures, that's how it started. We were in Beltry, and this had to be toward the end of '67. One of the guys, Hughes, the one with the writings, comes across the street. He went and get his haircut. He says, hey, man, there's a guy over there who'll take our pictures across the street. Vietnamese guy, take our pictures. Said, oh, let's go get him. So they went over. That's why they're all the same, these portrait pictures. These were taken by Vietnamese.
Oh, in Vietnam. Great. Okay.
Okay, they were taken by a Vietnamese guy. Then we got the portraits back. They were sending them home. I got one from all the guys. And I wrote on the back where they're from, Georgia. And that's how I started my look. I had these pictures. Now, in the reunion, I'm the only one that got a set of these pictures like this. But on the back of these pictures, their names is on it and where they're from. Like, there's here, Ralph Peters,
That's great. That's how you were able to track them down.
Yes, that's how it started. That's exactly how it started. Just the name, Charlie, New Orleans. Not C.R.I.P, just New Orleans, Louisiana, or something like that there. That's how it started. That's how we got them.
And you were able to find them.
And all of these pictures were taken. That's why they're all the same.
Yeah, it looks like a high school graduation class.
Yes,
And
we all went across
portrait.
the street
That's great.
and got these pictures taken, and they wrote their names on the back of the pictures. I kept the pictures. Then when the search started, that's all I had to go by was the back of the name. And with
That's
the computer
pretty unique,
age,
yes.
I started looking, and there might be 9 Rays in Alabama. So each one of them, I would contact and say, are you this
Well, that
guy?
is where we will start. When I come back here, we will do interview part 2 and just focus on that with these guys and
Oh,
their
yeah, that'd be
names.
good.
So
That's what I
if
want.
I just, unless there's something else you want to add, thank you so much and know a lot more.
And we'll talk about the little bricks with the names on it
Okay.
and all this here.
Yeah.
Tell you about that. In Hawaii, they got a brick garden, and we put bricks in for all 10 of them. If you put a brick in, a full-size brick, they send you a brick.
Okay.
So I got all 10 of them. Of course, see, I'm stuck with a lot. It's not stuck with. I have a lot of stuff, and it's hard to divide it amongst the guys equally, So I keep it. I'm the keeper of most of the stuff. And my thing is, when I pass away, my kids are sending it off to the museum in Hawaii, to the Wolfhounds Museum in Hawaii.
Okay, that's wonderful.
So,
Well, I'm going to wrap that up
Okay.
make a stopping point right here, and I will get that and say thank you for this.